Why isn't my giving working? Why isn't my giving producing this blessing that preachers talk about, or I hear from other people? And so what we need to tell you is that when you look in the Bible, there are actually different kinds of giving. They're motivated by different reasons, and they produce different results. Are you aware of that? Yeah, you know at least what? What are the different givings? Giving tithe is the 10% versus giving offering, okay? And then there's a giving to widows, okay? It's called alms giving. Okay, so we got 3 now. What else? Thank you. Oh, this is a very well-taught church. So we've got 4 different types of giving clearly identified. And we're going to go through them, show you the scriptures, and show you how they're motivated by different things and they produce different results. Is that fair? And if we can do this fast, we'll do it fast. And if it's got to take time, then we'll take time so that everyone's on the same page about this. All right, so the first thing is the tithe. Some people keep objecting to the tithe because they say, isn't the tithe in the Old Testament? Isn't the tithe in the Old Testament? And you should be able to answer that. All right? There are 2 main answers to this. We'll go backwards and we'll go forward. Go backwards in time. When people say it's in the Old Testament, what do they mean? They mean that it's under the law. It's been prescribed by Moses, and we are not under the law. Because obviously not everything in the Old Testament is passé. I mean, most of the scriptures about the second coming of Jesus Christ are in the Old Testament. So surely you're not saying if it's in the Old Testament, it's irrelevant. I mean, I don't think any Christian believes that. But a lot of Christians say if it's under the Mosaic law, like don't eat pork, then aren't we free from that? Well, of course, we agree with that. So go with me to Genesis chapter 14, and I want to show you that long before the law, 400 years before the law, there was a man of faith named Abraham. And he was practicing the principle of tithing, because tithing is an eternal principle, something that was always happening. And you'll learn something new here today. Come with me to Genesis chapter 14, verse 18. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. And he blessed Abram and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a 10th of everything. Say a 10th of everything? Good. Okay. So he had just gone to war with the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. He won. And then without any Mosaic law, without any compulsion from any religious body, he decided when he met a priest of God, here's 10% of everything. Okay, now anyone know who Melchizedek is? Yes, he's a high priest. But why did Abraham give Melchizedek 10%? Because that obviously tells you who's higher than who in rank, doesn't it? We consider Abraham the highest patriarch. He meets this unnamed person named Melchizedek, which means the king of righteousness, who's also the king of Salem, which means the king of peace. He meets this person and he says, here's 10% of everything that God just gave me. Who was this person? Some people say, yes, it could be a pre-incarnate manifestation of Jesus Christ. An epiphany, if you will. An epiphany, a manifestation of God himself. However, it seems when we look at the Bible that there are indications that this man was human. That he's not a divine person. He actually was a ruler of a city. He was there. He had a priesthood. It looked like he was just a normal person. So let me show you in Hebrews chapter 7. Okay, because people say, is tithing in the New Testament? Isn't it in the Old Testament? Well, Hebrews chapter 7, is that in the New Testament? Sure it is. Yep. Hebrews chapter 7, go with me. We'll start at verse 4. Now consider how great this man was. So Hebrews 7 says this was a man. Would you agree? Yeah? Unto whom even the patriarch Abraham gave the 10th of the spoils. And verily they that are of the sons of Levi, who receive the office of the priesthood, have a commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law, that is, of their brethren, though they came out of the loins of Abraham. But he whose descent is not counted from them. He's talking about Melchizedek. He obviously isn't a descendant of Levi because Levi wouldn't even be born until 400 years later. So he says, here's a man who had a priesthood before Levi was called to be a priest. Who's this man? According to the Jewish sources, this man was none other than Shem, the son of Noah. So when Abraham sees Shem, one of the people who got off the boat, he immediately says, I recognize your higher authority, and I pay tithes to you. 400 years later, God says all the children of Israel would pay tithes to your great-grandson, Levi. But before that happened, he says, I pay tithes to Melchizedek, to Shem. So in any generation, with or without the law, the principle stands that giving a tithe to God, giving a tenth of everything, is an eternal principle. But it continues, and it says, this man received tithes of Abraham and blessed him that had the promise, and without all contradiction, the less is blessed of the better. And here men that die receive tithes. Who receives tithes? Here, men that die receive tithes. Is this New Testament? Yeah, this is written decades after Jesus had died and risen again. And under the new covenant, Paul, I believe the author of Hebrews, said, here men receive tithes, but there he receiveth them, of whom it is witnessed that he liveth. And now he transfers the conversation over to heaven, and he says, we, men who die, receive tithes on earth under the new covenant. At the same time, he who's in heaven also receives tithes. It's eternal. It's universal. It's never going away. If you don't believe it, it's because you have a money problem, not because you have a theological problem. There's no issue in the Bible that tithes is for us today. So it says, and so, as I may so say, Levi also, who received tithes, paid tithes in Abram. For he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. Right, so if we go back in time concerning the tithes, we see that tithes predated Moses. Now let's go forward in time. Let's go to Malachi chapter 3. Okay? I'm going to explain to you how the four different ways of giving work. So I know that many of you will say, I already understand the tithes. Be patient. You're going to see something soon. Malachi chapter 3. Malachi chapter 3. A lot of people say, well, Pastor Steve, you're going to Malachi 3. Isn't that in the Old Testament? Well, if it's in the Old Testament, God put it as close to the New Testament as possible. It's like the last page before the New Testament. And let me tell you, if you have done end times with me, you should know Malachi 3 to 4 is all futuristic. These are apocalyptic scriptures. What do I mean? I mean they're eschatological scriptures. They're concerning end times. How do we know that? Just read it.